Hey, Yins. Y'all know CityCast covers a lot of local and lately even national politics. The candidate visits alone have been so intense. So if you need a small break from the real races, consider a new show from City Theater. It has a tongue-in-cheek name, I am quoting here. POTUS, or Behind Every Great Dumbass, are 7 women trying to keep him alive. It's running September 21st through October 13th, and they say it is perfect for fans of Saturday Night Live or Veep. Get your tickets at citytheatercompany.org and use code CityCast for $5 off your order. Today on CityCast Pittsburgh, Mayor Ed Gainey has announced his bid for re-election. And by election, we mean the one next year in November of 2025. But it'll probably mostly be decided in the primary over the spring. So today, we're talking about why he's announced so soon, what to expect from the mayor's office over the next few months, and who might decide to challenge him in the new year. It's Monday, September 16th. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about. I'm with the Trib's City Hall reporter, Julia Brodelsky, formerly Felton. Welcome back and congratulations.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me back.
Of course. So Gainey, seems kind of early. Is this weird? Like, I know he can campaign, of course, but we were checking on the laws for Pennsylvania, and he can't actually technically, legally be a candidate until January. What's going on with this?
Yeah, it definitely does seem a little bit early. And I've actually even heard criticisms from some people who feel that he should be more focused right now on helping other Democrats in the November election this year before he starts focusing on himself next year. So it's definitely early. He's definitely by far the first person to put his re-election campaign out there for next year. And because it's so early, it's really kind of hard to say why he's doing it that early, because we're just hearing speculation as to who might run against him. Nobody else has put out any formal campaign. Hard to say what the thought process is there.
Yeah, I mean, remind us what a mayor actually does, like can and can't do, responsibilities, how people use it, because every mayor is different.
Absolutely. So one of the biggest responsibilities that the mayor's office has is to come up with the draft of the budget. And we're actually coming close to budget season, so we'll see his newest budget coming out by the end of the month. And City Council also has a big voice in that process, and they can and almost certainly will amend the budget before they vote on it. But, you know, the mayor's office has a lot to do in crafting the budget.
Yeah.
The mayor's office doesn't legislate, but he does have to sign bills that come from council, and he can recommend legislation for council to introduce, things like that. He also has a lot of appointment powers where he chooses department heads and puts people on various boards and commissions. Oftentimes people in the city kind of say it's a strong mayor and strong council form of government, so he shares a lot of those powers with council.
Yeah. I mean, do you expect this is going to shift anything about the way he governs over the next year and change?
Hard to say for sure, but, you know, already we've seen, you know, since he announced that re-election campaign, he's been really focusing a lot on kind of getting out there and talking about the efforts that he has underway to bolster affordable housing. And we know that that was a big campaign promise for him in his first election. And I'm sure that that'll be something that plays into his re-election campaign.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised if we just see him a lot more. You know, sometimes he doesn't have a lot of public appearances and he's not talking to the press super often. So I imagine that as he's ramping up for his campaign, we might try to see a little bit more of a presence from the mayor's office.
That's probably good news for you.
Right, absolutely. But I think that he's just going to want to get out there and make sure that voters know what it is that he's doing, know what it is that he stands for, kind of try to reinvigorate any energy around some of his proposals, things like that.
Yeah. I mean, what do you expect he's probably going to run on? Like, what will he claim as an accomplishment? Like, you mentioned the budget, for example. Gainey kind of took a different tack than his predecessor, Bill Peduto. Like, Bill was very much into, like, getting attention for the city of Pittsburgh. And it seems like Gainey has been much more focused on let's pay for the stuff that's broken. But I will leave it to you as to whether or not we've actually accomplished that.
Yeah, so I mean, Mayor Gainey came into office with the Fern Hollow Bridge collapsing within the first couple days of his administration.
Yeah,
so
it was
I think
such like a weird optic thing to have President Biden standing there with a brand new mayor.
Absolutely. And so I think one of the things that we're probably going to hear him kind of touting is the fact that that was rebuilt within less than a year. And he has made investments into infrastructure. He's launched a new bridge maintenance division, things like that. I think that those are probably going to be focal points of his campaign. You mentioned the budget. The budget is kind of probably a rough spot for him, though, still, because the city's finances are really tight. I don't know that that's something that he's going to want to talk about a whole lot on the campaign trail in terms of dollars and cents.
Yeah, so much of the messaging from the mayor's office is like, everything's good, everything's fine, but everything's still a concern, which is like an interesting tack for them to take. Like, I kind of appreciate the transparency of it all, but it's like from the marketing perspective, I worry about that when they're like that, when they're front loading with the fact that we are still worried, just to be clear.
Right. I think that they're trying to pull back. Some officials are more concerned than others, and I think that they're kind of middle of the path. Some officials are really calling for a more serious reckoning maybe of what needs to be cut. Last year at budget season, we saw the council's budget director even throwing out the possibility of a tax hike. And, the Gainey administration is really trying to kind of rein that in and say, no, we don't plan to raise taxes. You're not going to see major cuts. But they also really can't deny at this point that revenue projections are down, and they're going to have to cut some spending somewhere to make up for that. And like I said, I don't think that that's something he's probably going to want to talk about a lot campaign-wise. He's probably going to try to focus more on the things that he's been a little more successful in, things that he's maybe thinking could play well with voters, things like investments in affordable housing that he's made, things like the bridge maintenance division, things like the fact that homicides are down, probably are all better topics for him to stick to than talking about the budget that looks a little bleak.
Yeah, so budget is in perhaps the con column, or at least the let's not openly talk about it a lot column. Any other challenges that you perceive for him that maybe folks are already talking about? This could hold you back.
Yeah, I mean, his administration has been embroiled in a couple of controversies recently, and controversies never go well with election season. We've seen, and it's still unfolding, but there was the issue with the use of city credit cards to pay a contractor from Parks and Rec. And that's like still an unfolding issue, and I'm anticipating there could be additional fallout from that. His spokesperson just resigned a few weeks ago amid that, controversy where she signed a petition that would was calling for the city to stop doing business with any entity with ties to Israel. And that was a big controversy there for a moment.
Yeah. Maria Montano, who's just had a really outsized role in the city administration. She's so visible over the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, she was probably the person that was the face of the administration, second only to Gainey, I think, in a lot of ways. And so having her step down right before the re-election campaign, I
was surprised that they announced right on the back of her leaving. That seemed like a strange juxtaposition for me.
Right? Yeah. I mean, I think that those are all things that probably aren't great for the campaign to have to try to explain your way around controversy. And I'm sure you've heard, he's gotten some pretty vocal criticisms from some members of council. Councilman Bob Charlin from Southside has been very vocal in saying you don't cooperate with council and you're not transparent enough. We've heard the city controller, Rachel Heisler, voicing a lot of similar concerns. The mayor's office refused to cooperate with her probe into city credit cards after that scandal came out. So I think, people are somewhat vocal in City Hall about some of the concerns that they have with the administration, and some of these controversies that are kind of unresolved are not going to help him.
What's up, guys? It's the champ, Sean O'Malley, here to talk to you about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to win real money while watching football. Run your game on Prize Picks.
Prize Picks will give you $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code SPOTIFY. That's code SPOTIFY on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play a $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
So what's it like to buy your first cryptocurrency on Kraken? Well, let's say I'm at a food truck I've never tried before. Am I gonna go all in on the loaded taco? No, sir. I'm keeping it simple, starting small. That's trading on Kraken. Pick from over 190 assets and start with the $10 in your pocket. Easy. Go to Kraken.com and see what crypto can be. Not investment advice. Crypto trading involves risk of loss. Cryptocurrency services are provided to U.S. and U.S. territory customers by Payward Interactive Inc., PWI, DBA Kraken. View PWI's disclosures at kraken.com/legal/disclosures.
One of the things that I think we've heard a lot from our Hey Pittsburgh readers and from our CityCast Pittsburgh listeners is just like, we can't get a hold of anyone in the mayor's office. Like, they may be able to reach a counselor or like a staffer within a council office, but they've had a lot more trouble reaching the mayor's office in ways that, at least the way they're talking to us about it, they say wasn't an issue before. And also board appointments. You mentioned that before, and I feel like it's something that's easy to overlook, but there are dozens and dozens, perhaps 100 or so boards and other like kinds of advisory committees that have to be filled for basic functions of government to happen. And a lot of those positions have just been vacant for a very long time.
And I'll add to that too, it's not just general constituents who I've heard having a hard time getting in touch with the mayor. It's also council members and the controller's office and like other city officials who are saying that he's not even cooperating with them, not even taking their calls sometimes. So that's, I think, a problem that we're going to hear people talking about.
Yeah. Well, what about support? Do you imagine he's going to have, significant endorsements? Those were kind of split in our last major local election with, now county executive Sarah Innamorato. But it was such a crowded primary field that the endorsements kind of went all over the place. It's
probably going to depend on how crowded this primary field is, too,
Fair,
to be honest, because we don't know who else is running. It's hard to say at this point. We know last time when he ran the first time, SEIU, which is a big local union, they gave him a lot of support. I anticipate that they'll be a key ally again this year.
He's hired a lot of members of SEIU into his administration, but again, one of the most visible ones was Maria, and now she's gone.
Right. So, like I said, it's early to say how a lot of those endorsements will go. I think, some of the council members seem to be closely aligned with him, so those will probably be some endorsements from certain members of council. But I think, like I said, not knowing for sure who else is going to run, it's hard to say. But I think we'll see even within city government, I think we're going to see a lot of people splitting off and choosing different candidates in the primary.
What about money? A war chest? Like the city's not doing great, but the Gainey campaign, how are they? I realize as I'm asking that, have they even had to file a report yet?
No, I do not believe so, no.
Because they won't until they're official in January.
Right. So it's hard to say. And I think how that looks, again, is going to depend on how crowded that primary field is, how well he does. If it's just Gainey and one or two other folks, maybe that plays differently depending on who these people are and how many candidates. Because, obviously, the more candidates and the better the pool of candidates is, the more we're going to see those potential donors and supporters kind of faction off and split up.
Well, let's get to that then. The hot question. Have you heard whispers about who's going to challenge Gainey? Because obviously no one's official yet, but I feel like I keep hearing the same names over and over and over.
We're all hearing whispers. Like you said, no one has officially announced a challenge, but there was some early polling done that pitted Gainey up against County Controller Corey O'Connor and City Controller Rachel Heisler. And those names have been circulating. Both of them are pretty popular figures from what I can tell in the city and the county, And
controller's like a money position. They're like making sure that like payments are getting made and dots are being connected, that kind of thing.
They're essentially the independent fiscal watchdog for the city and the county. So Right, like you said, they handle a lot of financial stuff. They perform a lot of audits to kind of look for efficiencies and proper spending in various city and county departments.
Corey O'Connor, of course, was a city councilman before, and his father was the mayor of Pittsburgh. He passed away in office.
Right, and so I think both of them are high-profile candidates, potentially, should they choose to run. People are already familiar with who they are, and, like you mentioned, the O'Connor family and kind of that whole story of his dad passing away in office. So I think that if one or both of them runs, I think that they will be very serious contenders up against Mayor Gainey. Obviously, people always say that the incumbent has a bit of an advantage, but when you have people who folks are already familiar with, who are already holding office and are pretty popular in those offices that they have, it could be a really interesting race.
Yeah. Well, and so for you, what's next? What are you going to be watching for over I'm so sorry to say this, the next full year and change?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, I think it's going to be interesting to see what Mayor Gainey is doing in office. Will he try to have more of a public presence so that folks are hearing from him directly more? By the end of this month, he has to submit a draft of his 2025 budget. So definitely keeping an eye out for that. Like I said, we're anticipating that they're going to have to really buckle down on trying to make some savings as we look into these out years, especially. So that's something we're keeping an eye on. Obviously, we are eager to see who else announces their runs over the next couple of months. And once we know who all is in that primary field, that'll be a very interesting thing to watch. I imagine that, whoever wins the Democratic primary is going to be kind of the presumptive winner, because it's been so long since we've had a Republican mayor. So, really paying attention to that primary for sure. And other than that, it's, I think, just kind of a matter of seeing whether any of these recent controversies can be resolved in a way that Mayor Gainey probably would like to see them resolved and done and over with before he gets too close to the primary, or on the flip side, maybe we see something else come out that really could hurt his campaign. It's, there's a lot of time left, like you said, so a lot could happen.
Julia, we'll be watching for more from you for sure. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, and good luck. You got a long road ahead.
Thank you.
That's all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. And reminder, if you are thinking about voting, this is part of why it's important, because this primary that's coming up in April will likely decide our city leaders too. So there's the November election this year, but also that one coming as well. If you're interested in learning more about Pittsburgh and Pittsburgh's past mayors, we encourage you to check out the quizzes that we're publishing on our website. That's pittsburgh.citycast.fm. We'll have more news from around the city tomorrow. Talk to you then. Eh?